Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. No fluff, right to the content. What do you do after you close on a rental? Either your first or your next deal. Here are 8 things that I do after I close on a deal. Not in any particular order, but this tends to be the order I do things in. If you're somebody who wants to reach financial freedom in 10 years or less and make work completely optional, even if you're not starting from the best position, hit subscribe. And if you'd like your questions answered, I answer every question in the comments below, and every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, I do a live stream that generally lasts as long as the questions do. Today, I'm going to cover these 8 things that I do every time I close on a deal. If you'd like to see the video about how to deal with a tenant after you sign a lease, here's the video that I made talking about that. Hey, post-edit guy. If you'd like to see a video on what to do with the tenant after you sign a lease, here's the video that I made. You know we haven't made that video yet, right? Did you forget we're super lazy? I'm going to make a follow-up video on how to deal with a tenant after you sign a lease.
But not today.
If you'd like to see that video, let me know in the comments below. And let me know if you like this list format. Set your mortgage payments up on Autopay. Make sure that there's more money in that account than the mortgage will cost. You never want to be in a position where you're waiting on rent to come in so that you can pay your mortgage. Count on the mortgage going up a little because taxes can change after a deal closes. Watch that your homeowner's insurance is paid and that your lender has record of it, because sometimes your lender, if they don't get record of your insurance being paid, will institute lender-placed insurance, which often costs a lot more than the insurance that you found. Count on your mortgage company selling your mortgage within a few days of closing the deal. So pay attention to who actually owns the note so that you're paying the right company. Use the inspection report as a type of to-do list. I would focus on the items that are in red first, that are generally towards the top of the inspection report. A lot of times they involve safety. Some things on the list you can do. Some things you'll want a handyman to do. Some things will require any licensed contractor specific to the type of repair being done. Usually anything on the roof, on the electric panel, I'm hiring a pro. Some states require anything in the electric panel has to be done by a licensed professional. Make sure they have the right insurance in place. A lot of roofing companies will get general contractors insurance, which doesn't cover people on the roof. You can check on your state's website if their insurance is not only the right type, but current. There are some things that I will add that might not be in the inspection report. I put in these keyless locks. I prefer schlag. I put these type of locks on both exterior doors. This way, in 10 years of investing, I've never had a tenant lockout. The batteries can die, but the odds of both batteries dying at the same time are very slim because generally one door is going to be used more than the other. I put in these motion sensor LED lights. It improves the safety on the property, reduces the expense to the tenant, and updates the look. There are some things that I want to add that might increase rent, like turning a den into a bedroom. There are some things that I do that might not increase rent, but they will reduce tenant turnover, such as adding or keeping a dishwasher. You're generally not going to get more rent because there's a dishwasher, but you're going to have less tenant turnover. Avoid making a lot of updates that might not get more rent, because some people make the mistake of trying to get a rental up to the point where they would be happy living there. It's a rental. I focus on safe, functional, clean. I try not to do updates unless they're actually going to increase rent or help retain tenants and limit tenant turnover. Some people tend to make upgrades on a rental like they were trying to make it so they could live there. But you don't. It's a rental. If it isn't going to increase your rent or help limit tenant turnover, it's an expense that doesn't have a good return on investment. Have your leases ready. Some states have a landlord-tenant resource page where you can get your lease. Sometimes people will go to apartments.com, Zillow, or use Hemlane and use the lease that they have. If you're a BiggerPockets Pro member, they also have a lease for each state that was made by an attorney. You can also see an attorney and have a lease drawn up. I would contact an eviction attorney in your area and specifically ask them, is there any verbiage that you would like in my lease that might make your job easier if we ever had to go through an eviction? I like to retain the attorney, even though I've never had to do an eviction yet. I have an attorney retained just in case I do. Have your record keeping set up. I use this book, and if you're familiar with my content, you know that my entire business is in here. Determine where you're going to keep these things, like your leases. A thumb drive can fail. A computer can fail. So I recommend having more than one location to keep your documents. And what I like to do is actually email myself a scanned copy of the signed leases so that I have access to it no matter where I'm at. Contact utility companies in your area and set up landlord policies. This way, the utilities will go back into your name if the tenant ever moves out. This means you will have power when you're showing the unit to potential tenants. You will have power for handyman and contractors that are going to do repairs or do maintenance while it's vacant. Find out in your area which utilities are allowed to be in the tenant's name and which ones are required to be in the landlord's name. An example is in my area, some of the municipalities that I work with do not allow renters to put water in their name. So the electric, the gas, the trash, that kind of stuff is in the tenant's name, but the water is in mine. So you need to determine how you're going to bill the tenant for the utilities that are in your name. In some instances, you adjust the rent to include the expense in it. I like to do a flat rate. And check your local area because in some areas you're not allowed to charge more than what the actual expense was. My state doesn't require that. So on average, the water bill is $45 to $50. I charge $55 a month, meaning there's a little bit extra every month, which makes up for the 1, maybe 2 months in the summer when the cost of water spikes so that it balances out for the year. Set your rents. You should have a really good idea what the rents are going to be because it was one of the things you used in your calculation to determine if you wanted to buy the property or not. Remember, most of us are investing on yield, and to determine your yield, you need to know 3 things: price of the property, current interest rates when you close on the property, and what the rents are. So you already should have a pretty good idea on what your rents are going to be. I made this video here, which I actually made, on how to determine your rents. When you list your property, you have to look at your rent and how long it's listed, because a lot of people, when they're starting out investing, we have this fear of, what if my property sits vacant? How many months might I have to pay the mortgage? But an experienced investor knows that the right question is, how much might I have to lower my rent to get a tenant? Not how long will it be vacant, but how much do I have to lower it? So when you list your property, you might wait a week or 2 weeks. And if you don't have a whole bunch of traction, you might look at a rent reduction. Make sure the place is actually rent ready when you do the showings. This means that all of your repairs and upgrades are done, the place is clean, and the lawn is mowed. When it comes to lawn maintenance, for single-family houses and small multifamily where the yards are clearly distinguishable as to which one belongs to which unit, I put the lawn care and maintenance as a tenant's responsibility. It's actually in the lease that way. But I use the 8-foot rule. Anything 8 foot or higher is my responsibility. Anything 8 foot or less is managed by the tenant. I do have a property that's a fourplex where the yards aren't clearly defined. So in that instance, I actually have a service that goes in and takes care of the lawn. You only want tenants seeing the place when it is rent ready. Don't let them come and look and you have to explain the counters are going in next week or that tree will be gone tomorrow. Have everything like that done before they come to see it. Determine how you will list the property. Are you going to use the free services on Zillow, Apartments.com, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace? Are you going to do like I did recently and use the paid service on Hemlane so that it hits 30 platforms instead of just the 1 or 2 that you put the information on? Sometimes, depending on the area that you're in, there might be one platform that performs better than the others. In some areas, it's just like somehow everyone decided Craigslist is the thing. In my area, Apartments.com and Zillow perform really well. Hemlane knocked it out of the park. I had a tenant placed within 6 hours, basically, because it was easier to put it on 30 platforms instead of me going in and putting in the data 30 different times. Once you have decided the platform that you're going to use, you need to determine how you're going to collect your rents. It is free to collect your rents on things like Apartments.com and Zillow and Hemlane. They have options for this. But there are 3 things to consider when it comes to collecting rent. For that, I made this video here, which is another video that I made. Since you've decided which platform you want to list the property on, you also need to set your criteria. What income are you going to require? I've never looked, asked, or cared. What credit score are you going to require? What are you going to look at for evictions? Make sure you're using criteria that's legal to use in your area. There are some areas that don't let you do a criminal background check. There is push to not use people's credit scores either. You're also going to have to determine in your criteria if you will or will not allow pets. I actually like to allow pets because of 2 reasons. A lot of my strategies are used to limit tenant turnover. People don't like to relocate pets. Even if the pet's human moves with it, that's a pet relocation. And second, I don't want to have to deal with people providing fake or real emotional support animal documents that you can just print off of the interwebs. And who cares if they're real or not, because I allow pets. The only thing to consider is if you're going to charge a pet fee, not a pet deposit, because deposits have to be refundable. But if you charge a pet fee on move-in, I charge $250 one-time fee, then I charge $25 a month. If the person has an emotional support animal or all of their pets qualify, whether it's real or not, you can't charge pet fees, at least in most areas. Some people don't like to allow pets because they think there's going to be a lot of damage. Almost all of the damage I've ever had on a property was done by a kid. I don't think I've ever actually dealt with any pet damage. Even the family that has the pig, I've never seen any pet damage on my properties. With your property listed, you need to really watch for inquiries and applications. Remember that there's a difference. Inquiries asks for information, requests for tours, is free for the applicant, which means you're going to get a lot of window shoppers and people not really serious about renting. An application that comes in means somebody actually paid the money to Zillow, Apartments.com, or Hemlane to have the application ran, which means you're going to get a credit report, which should include credit history, an eviction report. You're going to find out their income, which you might want to also verify. When people request tours, I only do tours if somebody paid for an application. If somebody requests a tour but didn't pay for an application because they might be a window shopper, I don't take my time and go and do a tour. I will set up like an open house format where I tell every applicant that's interested, as long as I have 5 or more, that there is a 1-hour period, either in the evening or on the weekends, that I'm going to be at the property, available to show the property to anybody who shows up, letting them know there's going to be more people than them showing up and that it's an open house format. This does a couple of things. Saves me time, eliminates window shoppers, or if they come, it's not a real waste of time because you're already there. And third, creates a little competition. So with your property listed and your criteria in place and you choosing your tenants, make sure, like I said, that you're using the legal ways to determine which tenant you're going to go with. But you are also making a commitment to work with this person for probably a year. Make sure that year doesn't suck. If they are demanding, whiny, unresponsive, or rude, I use that in part of the elimination process too. In most areas, you have to take the first qualified applicant who applies, but I'm also going to judge them on how my interactions with them are. You are not committed until you actually sign a lease. Being a jerk is not a protected class. That's actually probably a good thing. I hope these 8 steps that I take after closing on a rental have helped you figure out what you want to do, in whatever order works for you. Remember, if you want to see that video that talks about what happens when you're signing a lease and after with that new tenant, let me know in the comments below, and even with the lazy, I'll make that video. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.